updates in the cannabis legalization from yesterday's elections. Lots of good stuff here. We're going to talk about the different states that got legalized and some plans for you as an operator or as someone trying to get into the industry. What should you consider? So we'll wait about maybe 1 or 2 minutes here for everything to kind of people to jump into the room. If you're watching this, wherever you're watching from, go ahead, drop in the chat where you're calling in from. Are you in one of these new states, or are you in, a current operating market? We're going to talk about the new legalized markets here. So maybe about 5 to 8 more seconds here. Nice. Greg Richard here in New Jersey. I'm glad you joined in. We're going to talk a lot about New Jersey. That's probably the one I'm the most excited about. So good deal. Good deal. All right. So we'll get started with the presentation here. So over the past 24 hours, we've learned that 5 new states have legalized cannabis for either recreational, medical, or both uses. Now, those states are Arizona for recreational, New Jersey for recreational, South Dakota for recreational and medical, Montana for recreational cannabis, and Mississippi for medical cannabis. Now, those markets could create $2.5 billion in medical and recreational cannabis business sales by the year 2024. So that's a lot of money we're talking about here. And the industry is just exploding naturally. So you also may have saw that Vermont about a month ago legalized recreational cannabis. So this is a lot of stuff moving over here, especially in the Northeast. So let's go ahead and break down each market as to its size, the current landscape, and the thoughts about the future here. But before we get started, I need to let you know that the information contained in this presentation is meant for guidance purposes only and not as professional legal or tax advice. And further, it does not give any personalized legal, tax, investment, or any business advice in general. So with all that out of the way, let's dive into our first market here, Arizona. Now, this is the second largest populous market of the new ones here. So 7.3 million people. So there's a fair amount of total addressable market for recreational clients here. Now, they do have a capped licensing structure of 10% of the traditional pharmacies in the state. So think CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, things like that. So they have just shy of 1,500 traditional pharmacies in Arizona. So the dispensary count will be capped about 145 to maybe 60 at the most, right? You're not seeing a ton of CVSs being built. So we don't see this, dramatically increasing. But for every 10 pharmacies, traditional pharmacies that go up, 1 dispensary can now have another license. Now, the proposition also grants localities certain regulatory powers regarding cannabis establishments, including the prohibition of such cannabis businesses within their jurisdiction. You see this in places like California, where 2/3 of the state does not allow commercial cannabis business activity. Now, should they exercise these powers, these localities or these jurisdictions, it could lower the cannabis consumption and thus lower the tax revenue obtained from cannabis sales. Now, social equity is also earmarked in this cannabis legislation. And according to Canna Radar, there is 106 licenses actively that are vertically integrated. I think there's at least 130 operators though, so close, right? So that leaves about 40 or 50 new licenses potentially up for the public and social equity licenses, because some of these earlier medical marijuana businesses are going to get probably first crack at these licenses, these recreational cannabis licenses. So from there, let's go ahead and talk about New Jersey here, okay? So you've got this is the largest, newest market, right? It's almost 9 million people, 8.9 million people here. Now, why do we talk about population? I'm talking about how big these places are, okay? That's called your TAM, your total addressable market. And if you were to conquer an entire state, that's how much pie is actually available in that state. Now, you're going to be fracturing it because there's lots of operators there. But at any rate, this is your total addressable market. Now, people are not evenly distributed in all states, right? There are very high densely populated urban areas, and there's suburban areas, there's rural areas. So people are spread out in different areas of that nature. Now, you could go into a very large state like a New Jersey or an Arizona, but be in the middle of nowhere and have only 10,000 people within 5 miles of your dispensary. Or say you're in Arizona, you go to downtown Phoenix, and maybe you have 3 million people within a 10-mile radius of you. So really, we talk about the market size, but cannabis is a local business. So understand that you really need to look at the actual driving radius of your dispensary or business location and how many people you can actually capture in that market. Now, New Jersey is special such that Governor Cuomo from New York said that New York is going to legalize cannabis in a legislative action probably by April 2021, which is amazing, but that also puts pretty big pressure on, New Jersey to get this right, because, New York does not want New York money traveling over to New Jersey to buy cannabis when, hey, in 12 to 18 months, they legalize it. Why not fast track that process as well as capture the revenue, the tax revenue from that, not just the business revenue for the local businesses, but the tax revenue for the cities, the states, and the counties. Now, State Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Nick Scutari said that within 1 month of the vote, the medical cannabis dispensaries in New Jersey will be able to sell recreational cannabis. Now, New Jersey has licensed only 12 companies thus far to grow, process, and sell medical cannabis with 90,000 registered patients. So we're looking at almost 100x increase in total addressable market from the medical market here. That does mean that there's going to be huge supply squeezes. So we'll see how it all plays out. But New Jersey is the one I'm the most excited about, specifically because this is about the Northeast is really going to have to make their move. They're really going to have to think about, okay, you've got Vermont, you've got New Jersey, now New York comes on, Pennsylvania should be pushing in there. You're starting to see probably some push on, all right, let's do a Northeast pact and create this kind of epicenter for cannabis in the Northeast part of our country here. Now, the next state we'll talk about is South Dakota. I'll get to the questions in just one moment here. But okay, South Dakota. So this is a significantly smaller state, less than 1 million people, 900,000 people, but you can still make a big, big business in South Dakota. Now, what's unique about South Dakota is that they legalize medical and recreational cannabis at the same time. Now, this will be a local licensing type of thing. So the cities will set the number of licenses, but the law states that they want to, issue enough licenses to substantially reduce the illicit production and sale of cannabis throughout the state, but avoid what they call undue concentration. So what is undue concentration? Essentially, it's saying that, hey, you can't have too many businesses close to each other and artificially giving someone ownership of a local market. Now, there can be many debates back and forth. Should undue concentration even be, on the table? But hey, we'll see. If they want more tax revenue, they may kind of reduce that amount. Like in LA, I think it's 700 feet from another business that you cannot be close to. But we'll see how it all comes together. But that's South Dakota in a small segment there. Now we have Montana. This was a good one to look at because they had 2 ballot initiatives on there. One about the actual age and if they're going to create recreational cannabis laws and regulations. Now, there are about 1.1 million people in the state of Montana, so a bit larger than South Dakota here. But again, 2 ballot initiatives here. You had Initiative 190, which was to legalize recreational cannabis. That passed, as well as the constitutional initiative of 118, which then set the marijuana consumption age for recreational at 21. Now, under the proposal, half of the public revenue generated from cannabis sales is going to go towards environmental conservation programs. And then the rest of it's going to go to general fund and many other things. But that was one of the big sticking points, is that half of this is going to go to environmental conservation programs. Now, according to CannaRadar, there's 288 licenses in the state of Montana, and existing cannabis operators or medical marijuana operators will get first crack at licenses entering into the adult use market for the first 12 months. Now, the initiative also requires that business licenses only go to Montana residents. So it's a pretty captured market there. But hey, if you want to move there, pay your taxes there, become a resident there, maybe you could start your cannabis business in Montana. And lastly, rounding it out here with the different states that legalize cannabis through this election here, Mississippi. Now, with 3 million people in the state, this will be a market to keep your eye on, because though it is, yes, generally conservative in nature and most other laws, they did pass medical cannabis with a 74% majority, overwhelming majority here. Now, it also now this law, it allows doctors to prescribe medical cannabis for only 22 debilitating conditions. So it's very limited in scope on who can participate as a patient in this market. But hey, it always starts small, a little spark, and then boom, 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 it grows up, and now we've got a big cannabis flame here. Now, it is a move in the right direction. Now, the Grassroots Initiative 65 will require a medical marijuana program to be in place by August 2021. So we've got about, 10 months here until they actually get it. So that's great. Now, you usually see if something becomes legalized as recreational, it takes about 2 years for them they give themselves at least a 2-year window to create those regulations for the cannabis industry. So Mississippi moving forward quite quickly here with their program. Now let's hop into questions, and then I have another set of things here to talk about, which is getting a cannabis business license in these states, things you should consider, and how to kind of get ahead of the process. But first, let's hop into questions. So from Instagram here, Mona Organic says, what are your thoughts on how aggressive you can be on cost of goods sold for a California farmer? Great question here. Cost of goods sold is pretty much going to be dependent on the vertical that you're in, and the ones with the most restrictive access to COGS is going to be dispensaries, right? There's not much indirect costs you can back into COGS, but cultivators, you have a lot more liberty. Almost 80 to 90% of your costs can be added into COGS. You can be more aggressive. It's about your risk tolerance here as well. But I'll just end it with this, because this is a very nuanced explanation, or it deserves a more nuanced explanation. But the thing is this, you have to remember that you cannot just arbitrarily stuff items into COGS. You cannot just put any old indirect cost into COGS. You have to think about a reasonable methodology for your cost of goods sold. So using IRC 471 to make sure that you are using a tax code that allows you to back particular costs into COGS. And it may not be the entire cost as well. You can do it by square foot, by time. It can be by the weight. There's lots of different ways to split costs up, to put some into COGS and some that are just SG&A expenses that will not be allowed to be deducted. So hopefully that answers your question there for you. Now let's hop into some other ones here. So TY Cultivation says, what about cultivation facilities for, say, Colorado or California? Not specifically sure your question there. Drop in a little bit more information. I can jump into that one here. Greg said, just want to point out that the Cannabis Regulatory Committee isn't staffed or operational here yet. Very, very true. Okay, so look, we saw New Jersey, they're going to turn on their recreational commercial cannabis activity almost right away, within 30 days, a month. And as I brought up, there's going to be supply squeezes. There's going to be regulatory people and employees that need to implement this that have not been hired yet, that are not trained on their software yet. So yeah, we can be very excited, but I want this also to be a healthy dose of reality. You need to start your movement right now, but you cannot expect like, hey, we're going to open up our dispensary in 45 days. It doesn't work like that. You can't even close a mortgage that quick or close a lease that quick. So what I'm trying to give you here is a 30,000 foot look about what the territory and the terrain is going to look like over the next 60 to 90 days, as well as the next 12 to 18 months. This is a long process, right? We legalized it in a day, you voted on it in a day, but the legalization process has been this big push by a lot of these grassroots initiative people. So if anything, pat the people in the back that pushed and got the signatures and did all the different advocacy groups. That's really what we're talking about in the moment. But at any rate, there's still time to prep for those licenses here. Now, Ray Lopez says, Mississippi Medical checking in here, originally from the Cali scene. Ray, I wish you the much success. Mississippi is one of those sleeper markets, I believe, because it's going to put pressure on Alabama, Georgia, and other states. I think Arkansas may have medical cannabis, but it's going to put pressure on the South. Like, hey, Oklahoma moved on it. Then you've got the, Oklahoma, you've got Florida moving, you've got other states moving. There's going to be kind of a movement here for medical cannabis, if not recreational. We'll see how the presidential election shakes out. We may not know till the end of this week, and then any other type of actions that happen around the election. But if we do see a Democratic president, potentially we see rescheduled cannabis and then a more open cannabis market throughout the entire country. Now, Andrew Curtis here says, I don't understand why I'm in a state where we are considered criminals, but we have passed a bill for medical marijuana that has gone nowhere. What's up with this? And he's in Kentucky. Yeah, look, that's one of the, I think it's the last prisoner project. There's people that are sitting in jail since 1988, and they're going to be in jail for a long time, and it's illegal in their state. I think that person is actually sitting in jail in Michigan here. At any rate, there is a whole lot of issues around the legalization and the criminality and, people being locked up. And there are big groups out there trying to expunge all of these records. And what you're seeing with a fair amount of these new legalization efforts is that expunging records and kind of erasing what happened with the war on drugs to these people's records to allow them, hey, if they don't even want to be in the cannabis industry, they can at least go get a normal everyday job that has a higher wage. Right? When you have a drug conviction, usually you're kind of not considered for larger jobs, higher paying jobs. So that's one of the most important things. It's a conundrum that, it's an incongruency in the market, shall I say, such that people are being criminally penalized for something that another person who may be their next door neighbor is making money from, or taking at least a paycheck home as a bud tender selling this. It's not fair. I agree with you on that, Andrew. Jennifer said here, Oregon legalized all drugs and it's $100 fine if caught. Yeah, so if you saw 109, I think that's just for the psilocybin. It may be for all the other ones, but at any rate, methamphetamine, heroin, every hard drug has now been decriminalized in small amounts. You can't go out here becoming a drug kingpin, but in small amounts. So this is a great first drop of the first state that's going to be doing that. So we'll see how that all moves out. I bet it's going to be a great case study to see how, arrests go down, how treatment goes up, how people's mental health improves from this, how people are going to get help, right? It's going to be either $100 fine, or you can opt into taking, I think it's like drug recovery programs, rehabilitation programs, instead of paying the fine. So we'll see how it all shakes out. This is a great move. I'm very excited for all of these things happening in the industry here. So without any more questions, actually, I'll get to the last one here on Instagram. What are the biggest write-off problems and misconceptions about dispensaries? Dispensaries, I'll tell you the biggest misconception, and this came out in the Richmond patient group case this year. So typically, what you're looking at here is that dispensaries would say, hey, we're going to be a manufacturer. Let me step back. Tax code IRC 471 says that if you're a producer or a processor or manufacturer, you get to, write off a lot of the labor and all these different inputs. So dispensaries would say, we are a light manufacturer. We buy big pounds of weed and we break them down into either eighths or we break them down into pre-rolls, right? And they would say they're a processor and they get to write off different spots and different costs for their business. Well, when the Richmond patient group case came out, we made a whole video of that. You can check that out. Just Google Richmond patient group cannabis will be the first video to pop up. What it said in there is that dispensaries are not considered processors or manufacturers, which means they don't get access to tax code IRC 471. Now, I'm not talking about 471C, this wild new thing from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act where people say, hey, if you make less than $25 million, you can write off everything into COGS and 280E doesn't apply to you. Do not do that. Please do not do that. But I'm talking about the traditional 471 where you can say, hey, I'm a manufacturer and this is the square footage for all of our inputs. This is our machine costs. This is our labor costs. These are all the raw ingredient costs, and you can write off a lot more. At any rate, Richmond Patient Group pretty much boxed the dispensaries in saying you can only write off pretty much very little things here, right? The cost of your cannabis, the cost to not sell the cannabis, not to market the cannabis, but the actual, if you do bottle up cannabis, you can write some of that stuff off. But a lot of the larger deductions, and I don't know the specific details of what those are, Marco and Derek and our tax team would be more involved in saying what that is. But at any rate, dispensaries have their hands tied, and that's not a good thing. No one wants that. But hey, if we reschedule cannabis, 280E is out the door, and that may happen over the next 12 to 18 months, depending on how this election for the presidential race shakes out. Now, Greg, last one here. Do you know any startup lawyers? Yes, we do. If you could reach out to us via our website at greengrowthcpas.com, we'll put you in contact. We have a big Rolodex of lawyers. I don't even know if people know what that word is, Rolodex, but a good list of lawyers depending on where you are in the process and what state you are in, because lawyers are state by state. So Greg, go ahead, reach out to us and we can help you with that. Now, let's hop into, okay, I want to get a cannabis business license, but I don't know what to do specifically. Now, the big question is, okay, how do you prepare and kind of get ahead of this licensing process and increase your chances of successfully getting a cannabis business license? Now, I'm going to talk about two different kind of scenarios. If you're plugged into the industry and if you're not plugged into the industry, or if you're not operational, okay? So we'll start off with most people here, probably. If you're not plugged into the cannabis industry, we have 4 major tips here, okay? Tip number 1, you're going to want to look for cities that are favorable for cannabis businesses, right? Not every city is going to be licensing for cannabis businesses, though they may have the ability to do that, right? They may not be restricted in this. They may not open up licensing. So first, you want to look for cities that are open for licensing. What does that mean? If you're in a state that just went recreational, look where the medical cannabis businesses are concentrated. That's where probably recreational businesses are going to be concentrated. Now, in tandem with that, consider what vertical you want to be in, okay? Maybe you want to start a cannabis nursery with the smaller plants and the clones, but then you may want to expand to other verticals such as full cultivation, or you want to be a retailer with a dispensary or a delivery business, or be in the distribution business. You may want to be in manufacturing, or maybe go ancillary and be into testing, okay? Or you maybe want to go fully integrated, who knows, right? But think about which vertical you want to be in, and then is the city that you're looking at licensing those types of businesses, right? Not every city is going to license for every vertical, all right? Now, to pair with understanding what vertical do you want to be in, you need to understand what are your skill sets for yourself and of your team so you can bring the most value to the market. Don't just open up a cultivation facility because you think it's fun and sexy, okay? If you don't know how to grow cannabis very well, this is going to be an extremely painful and tough process, especially if you're doing it just for the money, okay? It's very, very easy to make money in the cannabis industry. It's very hard to keep your money in the cannabis industry, okay? What do I mean by that? Taxes, mistakes, they all eat up a lot of your cash. Now, if you're only doing it for the money, when you see how much at the end of the year you're making, and then you actually look at that as the number of hours you put in your hourly wage, you're probably making minimum wage or less as an owner of a cannabis business when you look at your distributions. Now, why I say all this, you want to make sure that you're passionate about what you're doing, right? If you're a cultivator, or say you work on different farms for other agricultural products, go into cultivation because you love it, right? If you're a logistics operator for DHL or for Amazon and you want to get into the distribution business, and this is just another product to move and to ship, then get into the distribution business. If you love talking to the general public, go into retail. If you've managed a CVS, or if you've managed a McDonald's, or you've been a general manager of a QSR, or a big business that has people in and out, maybe retail is right for you. Pairing your skill set and your passion with your vertical will result in much better success instead of going in it for just the money. Now, the second tip here is to begin to budget accordingly, okay? Starting a retail location for the first and having the first 6 months of operation can take anywhere from $750,000 all the way to 1.5 million plus, depending on the state and the locality that you're in. Now, cultivation, depending on the size and scale, it can go from $500K all the way to $25 million, depending on how you want to go, how big you want to go. I would say start small and scale up. Don't try to go and do 10 greenhouses at 5,000 square feet a piece. You will become overwhelmed. You'll run out of money. You'll make mistakes, and it will cost a lot more. You may not even get operational at that point. Now, again, it all depends on your scale. Now, nurseries, probably about 250,000 to 500K minimum. And look, there's a lot of capital investments in cannabis. All the different equipment, it's just, there's a marijuana markup on everything. Certain equipment's not even there, and you have to custom make your equipment. And you're typically paying higher than normal rents. You're going to have to potentially have a mortgage. You're going to pay high lawyer fees. You're going to be paying for security fees, security plans, environmental plans. there's a lot to go in this. This is a very highly regulated industry, just like alcohol, just like the airline industry, just like the pharmaceutical industry. So be prepared to pay a lot of money if you want to be in this industry. Now, there are many other factors, but it will take a lot of money to open one. And other verticals such as distribution, maybe you get along with a little bit cheaper, something, sub 500K, because you would probably not pay for your inventory. You're going to take everything on consignment. And manufacturing, at least $1 million. Equipment, your first test runs, developing your SOPs, all this stuff takes time, and all those inputs to create those SOPs takes time. Now, look at here. The third lesson I want to talk about here is going to be talking about building a team. I say this in almost every video, and I want to pound this into your face. Cannabis is a team sport. You cannot do this as a one-person operation. Very rarely will I say. There's only one person I met. They're in Oklahoma. They have a small-scale grow of 3,000 feet. Okay, if you want to stay small, maybe if you're in Oklahoma, you can do a one-person show, a one-man or one-woman show. But in most cases, you're going to build a team. And now you're going to need lawyers. You're going to need CPAs. You're going to need help with those things for your M&A activity, right? You're going to need that for your applications. You're going to need a CPA for your financial projections. You're going to need operations partners who can help you actually run the business. Maybe you're the idea guy or gal, and you're not really the operator of the day-to-day operations. Well, if you want to open up a dispensary and you have the money, or you're the idea person, you need to find a day-to-day operator, because if you don't like dealing with the public, a dispensary is going to make your life miserable. Okay, so building a team around you for those types of things. Now, if you're going into manufacturing, you may want to find a master manufacturer who's worked in CPG or things of that nature, where they've done large scale manufacturing or gone from small scale and then scaling up to these larger quantities here. And you're going to need a head grower if you're going into cultivation, someone who likely has experience, someone who is passionate about it, and who's going to take the time to figure out all the issues. One thing I noticed in my trip down to Oklahoma was, hey, there's a lot of people that know how to grow a lot of great cannabis. And this is someone I met that is from California that's in Oklahoma. And they said, hey, we were growing great in Humboldt, but then we moved over to Oklahoma, and the humidity really crushed our business. And then we had to do a lot of troubleshooting around, how do we manage the environmental factors in the grow operation, and a lot of different, details around that. So you want someone who is very well versed in dealing with different grow environments. Okay, so team is your third lesson here, your third tip here. And now the last one, and I think is the most important, because this is something that's going to help you build up over time, is that you should join your local cannabis community and see where the needs are. Right? You may say, I'm so passionate about dispensary, or grow. But if there's 100 dispensaries there and they're only all serving 10,000 people, there's probably not enough room for another dispensary. Maybe there's room for another cultivator or another manufacturer in this case, okay? But what you really want to do is get involved, right? There's already advocacy groups out there. They just passed these laws. So there's a built-in community already out there. So go out there, maybe even volunteer at current cannabis businesses or get a job there. Go to meetups if your state allows that, right? Stay safe when you do that too. Don't violate any, lockdown restrictions, and don't put yourself in any harm's way. But if you're not going to physical meetups, look at online meetups, Facebook groups, and different things like that. Join our email list if you haven't, all right? Also, you can reach out to other cannabis business owners via social networks and network with them, chat with them, talk with them, ask questions. Hey, what's the best part about being a retailer in New Jersey? What's the best part about being a cannabis cultivator in, we'll say Arizona? Ask these questions. Don't just assume Get part of the community. All right. So once you figured out your estimated location, where your funds are coming from and how much you need, and your team, the true first step is getting a property, buying or leasing it. All right. And then getting licensed when it opens up. And you're going to need to work with a local lawyer, as I brought up earlier, who fully understands the regulations and can help with your application, as well as everybody else, CPAs, security, environmental, operations, the whole kit. All right. Now be very, very thoughtful on that, because this is when the real race starts to building a meaningful business, all right? Now, the whole other scenario is, hey, I'm already plugged into the industry. I've got a couple million sitting on the sidelines. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get into the industry, all right? Well, if that's the case, consider buying one of those medical marijuana businesses that's already operating. Now that the law is passed that for medical to recreational, you're probably going to pay a significant premium than if you were to, purchase maybe 90 days ago. But that is your one way to potentially really dovetail yourself into this recreational market. Buy a medical business or start a fund with people who can, maybe get access in part ownership to multiple medical businesses, right? As someone who's well capitalized, you probably don't want to jump into the day-to-day ops. Maybe you do, but likely you don't. So maybe getting some exposure to multiple cannabis businesses in multiple verticals. What do I mean by that? Buy a 10% stake in a dispensary, buy a 40% stake in a cultivator, buy a 35% stake in a manufacturer, and buy maybe a 49 or 50% stake in a distributor, and maybe buy a larger stake, a majority stake in a testing lab, right? Think about how you gain exposure to this industry, right? That's jumping into the industry, right? It's not just a diving board jump. It's called getting exposure to the industry, your investment exposure, your investment upside exposure, potential downside exposure as well, but exposing yourself to the industry. Now, all this to be said here, what are we offering here at Green Growth CPAs, right? We're a financial compliance firm. Anything cash and cannabis, we can help you out with. So if you need pro forma financial statements, or if you need a gut check on your license, possibility, and potential, then please reach out to us and we can help you out with that. You can visit our website, greengrowthcpas.com. Click on the Get Started button in the top right corner of the website there, fill out the form, and you can schedule time with our team right there on the website. Now, you can also give us a call at 800-674-9050, and we can help you there as well. Now, let's go ahead. That's a lot of stuff I shared with you there. Now, if you have questions, drop them in on the chat here. I'll answer a few more questions. All right, let's see. I got to scroll up here. There's a lot going on. So Andrew says, with over half of the states legalized for medical marijuana, why haven't we put in a vote to the House and Congress like alcohol prohibition? Now, there have been movements to try to reschedule cannabis, to decriminalize cannabis, but really bringing it back, they're doing more around the cannabis banking and things of that nature. Those are the things. And I could tell you there's probably a myriad of reasons of why they haven't descheduled it or rescheduled it. There's different politics at play and power politics at play and posturing by these different politicians. Hey, we'll give you this cookie, but not this one. That's a very loaded question, and it's my very simple answer. We don't know why, but hey, we'll see how everything shakes out with the rest of the elections here and if that potentially does get rescheduled. All right. Eater, hey, my guy from Brazil, it's good to see you here. Good to see you, Eater. All right, Jennifer Rodriguez says here, I need mentors because I can do this. Got a team and a plan, but no capital and legally gray area. Live in NYC. All right, if you are a mentor, then hey, reach out to Jennifer. She's in here on the YouTube live stream. Just reach out, Jennifer. Also, let me just give you a few steps on finding a mentor in this industry. The first step to getting a mentor is finding out what is the specific thing you want to be mentored on. Mentors don't just give capital, they give advice, they can make connections, right? We call them smart money if you are getting capital from them, such that they're not just giving you money, they're also going to introduce you to their entire network, okay? So first, what do you really need help with? Because in that first meeting with your mentor, they're going to ask you, hey, what do you want to learn? And you're going to say, I don't know. Well, don't do that. You want to say, I need to learn about raising capital. I need to learn about creating a business plan. I need to learn about creating pro forma financial statements. All right, cool. I can help and introduce you to Michelle, who can help with the application or the pro formas, and I can help you do this or that, or they can personally help you out. So finding that out. And then the second part of this is just asking. Most people that have made it by whatever financial terms or happiness terms you want to say, they are willing to help other people out. They just never get asked, right? I'm a mentor to certain people, And it's only because they've asked that they want me to be their mentor. It's a great thing to feel that. So if you're looking for a mentor, ask people to be your mentor. Reach out to people. Find them on LinkedIn or on LeafWire or on Instagram or anywhere else you can find people and ask them. And this is not a lifelong commitment. They can be maybe a 2-month engagement as being a mentor, or a 12-month thing, or until you hit a certain threshold. So that's my thoughts on finding a mentor in the cannabis industry. All right. So Cody says, so you can own a dispensary in Mississippi now. Yes, there is a possibility to open up a medical marijuana dispensary, but again, it's very, very limited in who is going to be able to do that. Now, we don't know specifically the regulations. I think I said that Mississippi is going to open up their market by August 2021. They'll have all the regulations in place. So as these regulations start to, materialize, we'll give you more information, on the types of licenses that are available and how many of each of those licenses will be available. Now, Edith says white labeling is already working. All right, so Edith's talking about the white labeling thing that we were working on late last year. We're still working on partners with that. It's a very high friction process here, finding the white labeling. But Edith, if you're still looking for help with the white labeling, reach back out to our team. Again, go to greengrowcpas.com, fill out the Get Started form, and we can revisit those conversations. I believe you're stateside. You were in Brazil, but I believe you're stateside. If you're still here, great. If not, Brazil, we can still help you out there. Now, let's go ahead. Oh, Jennifer says she needs help with everything. Hey, we all need help with everything. I'll preface, or I'll add on to this. No one knows everything about the industry, right? There are self-proclaimed experts. Maybe I've been guilty of saying that I'm an expert, but I'm humble enough to say that I don't know everything. I don't know every law. I don't know every tax code, but I know enough to know that there are certain frameworks to either figure something out or find the right person that can answer that question for me, right? You have to have humility in this industry, because you may know everything on Wednesday at 6 p.m. and then you wake up on Thursday and there's a new bill that passed, or a city, that had their meets, and then now things have changed, right? Look at LA. You thought you knew everything about the LA licensing, and then boom, delivery licenses got kicked out for 5 more years for anybody that's not social equity. That's a big change that happened in just one vote or one night. So again, if you need help, reach out to us. If we don't know the answer, we'll put you in contact with the right people that do. All right. So let's look here. Brother Dank says Mississippi's restrictive program will be more viable than Louisiana's on launch. I think so. I think that, we have to see how all the specific nuances of the regulations play out. I could say that, hey, this one is better and this one is not. But seeing that Mississippi passed it by a 74% vote is very, very reassuring that this is going to be a great market. Again, it's kind of in the center of the South. So you could see some really good businesses being built in Mississippi to leverage out to the other states nearby. All right. Andrew says, are very informative. Hey, appreciate it. I am, doing this for you guys here. I'm glad you're finding value in this. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up our presentation here. We've been going for a good amount of time. So again, if you need help, or if you have questions about starting a cannabis business in these 5 new markets or anywhere in the country, then please reach out to us via our website at greengrowthcpas.com. Click the Get Started button. It's nice and big and green in the top right of the screen. If you're on your mobile device, there's a little hamburger menu on the top right. Click that and then click Get Started. Go ahead, fill out the form, and you can schedule time to speak with our team right on the website, right? Don't wait. Schedule your time now and chat with our team. Now, if you're not much with the, going to fill out the form, you can give us a call at 800-674-9050. Speak with our receptionist. They'll take a few notes, or he will take a few notes, and then they'll get that information to our team, who will then reach out to you and schedule time with you. But again, thank you very much for your time. It's been my pleasure chatting with you today. Hopefully you found this presentation valuable. If you did, tell a friend, share this video with your friends. Let them know that cannabis is here to stay. There's big things popping in the cannabis industry, maybe even more big things popping depending on how this election plays out on, the presidential as well as the congressional seats. I wish you much success. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.